Hey guys, and welcome to my vlog. So this week in fantasy world building, we're going to be talking about Flora and Fauna. So if you've been following the series, then at this point in time, you'll already have your weather and geography kind of set up. You have the skeleton that you need, and now we get to dress it up. So as far as Flora goes, you're only really going to have to figure out plants that are used for a few different things. You should already have kind of figured out your food, healing, decoration, poisons if applicable, and what's kind of occupying the scenery that your characters are moving through. If you're wanting to have some specific type of plant that couldn't possibly survive in the climate that you've set up, then you can just have a fantasy version of it. You just want to take into consideration that if you're going to have fantasy versions of everything, and you need to explain what it is and how it works to the reader, you can run into some problems. Usually how I've seen this resolved is if one of the characters is not from the fantasy world and compares it to something from the real world, but that doesn't really work if everyone is from there. So do that sparingly if you want something that is very, very similar to a real world equivalent, but is the fantasy version of it. So we talked about food in a previous video, and so you should have pretty much all of your edible plants figured out so far. The same is going to go if you're incorporating herbal medicine, which we've already talked about as well. If you want to be including herbal-based poisons, then you're going to be doing the same type of research that you did to develop your herbal medicine, because a lot of plants that are poisonous sometimes have medicinal properties as well, so it's very easy to do a simple shift from something that is helpful to something that can kill you. Animals are used for a lot of different purposes, so you can kind of figure out what's going to be relevant to your story. Which animals are going to be used for food, which ones are sacred, which ones are dangerous or feared, which are involved in your myths, which are symbols, say for crests or religions, which are used as transport, and which are kept as pets. Animals can fall into multiple categories. We've talked about magical creatures prior to this as well in another video, but if you're going to be including them, you want to know what their relationship is to your characters and how they're relevant to the story. If they're being kept as pets, can they communicate? Do they have beneficial powers, etc.? And is their behavior different from similar normal animals? For example, if someone is really gifted with horses, would their skills also be applicable to, say, Pegasus or a unicorn? In terms of animals in general, you want to know which ones are super common, which ones are your characters going to be seeing all the time, and which ones are super rare. Maybe they only hear stories about it, but they never actually see this creature. You're probably going to want to choose your animals based on your climate and geography. Simple mention of a very thick-furred animal will give people clues that, hey, maybe this climate is really chilly. Or if you're seeing very brightly colored, beautiful animals, then it's probably a clue that it is someplace kind of tropical. You can also make up entirely new plants and animals, really whatever floats your boat. You can do combinations of real-world animals, or magical creatures, or entirely new. It's really up to you. It also depends on how many animals you're going to be mentioning, because you don't want to get too bogged down in the details. You want to keep them plot relevant and significant to the story in some way. So if your characters are having to transport something, what animals would they use? If they're eating something, what animals are they eating? If they have their pets, if they're encountering mythical beasts, those are the kinds of ones you want to develop, not the entire flora and fauna for the entire world, regardless of whether they show up or if they're important. So that's all I've got for you on this topic. I know it was a much shorter video than usual, but that's only because a lot of this is relevant to several other categories, and I'll put links for those videos as well in the description below in case you haven't seen them yet. Thank you so much for watching. I hope this is helpful just in figuring out a little bit more of your world. And I will see you next week with another video. Bye!